I'm going to turn this over for a presentation from Kinder Morgan. I assume that after that, we'll be able to do question and answers. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out here tonight. I do want to recognize that our state senator, Kevin Avard, he's in the middle aisle, came out. I don't see any of the state reps. If they are here, stand up. Nope. All right, judging by the attendance, I think I've already asked Lucas from Kinder Morgan if there will be a further meeting, and there will, should there be more questions to be answered. And I'd like to ask, could you just put up your hands if you're a landowner or a land abutter? All right, so those are the people with preference. When we do get to the question and answer period, I would appreciate if you let those people go first, as they're most directly affected. Then after that, we'll open the floor to everybody. What I would ask, though, is at that time when we do question and answers, that we don't have multiple questions, just one at a time, please, so that we can get through everybody. If you have a second question, get back in line, and then if we can get to you, then you can ask the second question. But it's just a matter of expedience. We're not trying to cut you off at all. I'd like now to introduce the Kinder Morgan representative who's going to start off the meeting, and that's Matt Avard. Ellen Ford, I guess showed up, and Ellen will kick off the meeting.
Good evening. Everyone hear me with this? Is this good? Great. Good evening, everyone. Board of Selectmen. I'm Alan Four, Vice President with Kinder Morgan. And with me tonight, who will be assisting with the presentation, is Mark Hamrich, our Project Engineer and Project Manager, Curtis Cole, our Commercial Director, and Jim Hartland, our Land Manager. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about our company and what we do, and our proposed expansion of our existing Tennessee gas pipeline system in New Hampshire. We've had a number of town hall meetings this week, and this is part of an ongoing public dialogue we've had about a proposed project, and we look forward to dialogue and interaction tonight. So to get started, to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. Kinder Morgan is a transportation company. So we transport energy from one place to another. And this map shows our natural gas system of 70,000 miles of pipe across North America. We're the leading transporter of natural gas in the United States. And transport, as you can see by these pipeline systems, we transport natural gas to almost all parts of the United States. The pink line you see on this map that you can see here is the blue line on this map, and that's the Tennessee gas pipeline system, the system that currently transports natural gas to New England and to New Hampshire. It's a system that's been in operation for 50 years, and it services, in addition to the Northeast, also the Southeast, and a major provider of natural gas supply to really all of the eastern United States. About 35 million homes are part of the Tennessee gas pipeline system. So the way we operate is that we don't drill for natural gas and we don't sell natural gas, we transport it, much like a tollway. So our customers have needs to deliver gas to consumers, homes and businesses, and we find a way to transport it. In particular, in the Northeast, we're transporting it through the Tennessee gas pipeline system. You can also see here, highlighted the Marcellus and Utica shales. Traditionally, your gas supply, the Northeast and New England gas supplies, come from the Gulf and the shales there. Currently, the natural gas supply to New England comes from the Marcellus Shale. Why? Because it's closer, it's cheaper, and it's plentiful. And that's where the natural gas supply will come to New England, whether this pipeline is built or not. It already comes from the shale, and it will come from the shale, proposing to expand the capacity of the region with that gas from the Marcellus Shale. So I mentioned that we're customer based, which means that we only build and operate systems to service customers. Customers being companies that you're probably familiar with here. These are customers on our current system, many longtime customers to the region, Liberty Utilities. At the top of the list, the leading natural gas distributor to New Hampshire. So that is also a customer of ours on our proposed new project. So all of these existing customers on our current pipeline system. We've operated in the state of New Hampshire for over 50 years. So this is an expansion of an existing system. These are the towns, about 10 towns in New Hampshire that we have operated in, and 3 counties. You see here on the map where our current system is in the state, about 50 miles. Also, we often get questions about, for those who are near pipelines or have pipeline infrastructure nearby, what does this actually look like when pipelines are finished? So these photos represent our current system and existing rights of way in other parts of New Hampshire where we have the system. I showed you in the previous slide here. These are photos of post-construction right-of-way once pipelines are in service. Pipelines are buried underground, and you can see here identified with the above-ground markers. There is a pipeline underground in all of these photos. While the pipeline itself is buried, there will be some above-ground facilities. These are actual photos of existing facilities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Here, a compressor station at the Pelham area, and meter stations and valve stations in nearby states. Not all of the compressor stations and meter stations and valve stations will look exactly like this. And we have a photo of a compressor station, or a rendering of a compressor station that Mark will talk to you about a little bit, that shows what we believe the additional compressor station in New Hampshire will look like. But these are existing facilities currently in operation. Typical. I mentioned the state of New Hampshire, our 50 miles of pipeline, about 60 years of operation, the county's impacted, and the taxes we currently pay as part of that existing infrastructure property. Curtis will talk a bit about the overall scope of the project from a commercial perspective.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, my name is Curtis Cole. Pleasure to be here tonight. So what I'm going to be focusing on right now are the commercial aspects and benefits to New Hampshire residents and businesses. What you see here on this screen is this blue area is what they call the Marcellus Shale. So in 2008, you only had a very small percentage of Marcellus gas reaching New England. That number continues to grow. The reason it's growing is because it's the most plentiful shale play in all of North America. It's prolific. They call it prolific. It's a 100-year life on the shale play. And it happens to be the lowest cost natural gas in North America. Give you an example. Today it's trading at, say, $1.60. In New England, you pay prices probably in the $15 to $18 range when it's $1.50 there. So what's happened is, what we're trying to do with this project is move the cheapest gas in North America into New England. Another thing that's a big factor is, in terms of moving forward, is how much gas is being used to generate electricity. In the last 15 years, you've seen a tremendous growth in the amount of generation capacity that is gas-fired. What it does is it replaces coal-fired and fuel oil facilities. So right now you're sitting on a little over half of your generation capacity in New England comes from gas-fired. That's a pretty big increase. They've added to the region about 24 power plants in the last 15 years. That's a very good thing from an environmental perspective. It's lowered your emissions, both your CO2, your SOx, as well as NOx. That's been a very, very positive benefit. It's helping you achieve your greenhouse gas emissions criteria. But one of the downsides of adding that much gas-fired capacity, generation capacity, is you haven't kept pace with adding pipeline capacity to the region. And as a result, when it gets cold, there's not enough gas to serve the gas-fired generators. So when that happens, a couple of things occur. One is gas prices, they go up because there's not enough gas to feed the demand. So when gas prices go up, the other thing that happens is your electricity prices go up as well. And they go up significantly, and I'll talk about that. So in ISO, in New England, the operator of the transmission grid is called the ISO New England. And the CEO of the ISO New England had a recent quote. And he said, in New England, increasing pressure on an already constrained natural gas infrastructure is our most pressing and urgent challenge. New England's pipeline infrastructure is inadequate to serve demand by local distribution companies for home power generators in the winter period. This constraint has led to significant electric reliability challenges. Now, I'm not going to read everything to you, but what I'm trying to convey to you is this is the CEO of the transmission grid. He's the one that their entity manages the reliability of the grid, and they're saying we're projecting, this is just today, 8,300 megawatts to come offline by 2020. 8,300 megawatts is approximately 25% of the generation capacity in the region. So you already are facing the highest energy prices in North America. The New England region has the highest outside of Hawaii. But once you lose more fuel oil and coal-fired facilities, more inefficient units come offline, you got to replace those megawatts. What you're looking at replacing are wind, solar, Canadian hydro, perhaps, offshore wind, or natural gas-fired power plants. A recent estimate by Competitive Energy Services estimated that in order to satisfy the need to serve power plants in the region, you need to add 2.4 BCF a day to the region. And when you do that, you put yourself on an equal playing field with other states. So right now you happen to be paying the highest prices in the nation. Once you add 2.4 BCF a day, you're on an equal playing field with states such as Pennsylvania and other surrounding states. If you were to add 2.4 BCF a day to the region, that's equivalent of, per their estimate, almost $3 billion to the electric customers alone. That's not even including the benefits to the gas customers. So this is a little bit more the same. Basically, the electric industry, the reason you don't have gas-fired generators owning what we call firm transportation capacity, as Alan said, we move the gas product through our pipeline. That's called transportation capacity. The shippers acquire firm transportation capacity on our pipeline. They reserve space on the pipeline. Gas-fired generators, they don't secure firm transportation capacity because the way the model works, the way the ISO New England system is set up, they don't get to recover those costs. I'll give you an example. A local distribution company, Liberty Utilities, if they were to enter into a contract with us, which we're going to talk about, they get to recover those costs and pass it through to the ratepayers because they're only going out securing firm transportation capacity to serve the customers in the cold of the winter. Power generators, they don't get to recover those costs. It's a bit of a disconnect in the model that the ISO New England and FERC and the 6 governors in New England are trying to fix. We're working with them on that fix, by the way. We're working to satisfy the needs of power generators. This is a quick example of, as soon as I can figure out how to work this. Berkshire Gas imposed a moratorium on future gas customers. Same thing with Columbia Gas in Massachusetts. Basically, they're saying unless you put in Northeast Energy Direct, we can't serve any more customers. That's really where we're at. We're at complete full capacity. We're trying to add capacity to get all the way back to Marcellus, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. but they can't serve any more customers, they can't add any more customers, they can't bring in businesses, and businesses will leave. Same thing up here in New Hampshire, we talk about Liberty Utilities as well. We have identified several times now that we've reached agreement with local distribution companies to anchor our project to the tune of 500,000 decatherms a day. This is a significant piece of part of our project. They anchor the project so we can build it and then continue to add customers along the way. One of the customers is Liberty Utilities. It's really in our top 3 shippers on the project. Liberty Utilities has significant growth plans to expand their system to serve customers all throughout New Hampshire. Their plan, you can't basically expand your distribution system until you get an interstate pipeline. It's ineffective. It's not cost effective to try to build all the way to Rindge from Concord Valley. It just doesn't make sense. Once you get a pipeline go through there, now Liberty Utilities can come in and put in a distribution network behind it. It takes some time, but they have a very aggressive development plan. Now, I do want to mention real quick. I'm going to go back and keep the mic and drive Alan nuts here. Where's the map? I'll hand it over to you to do that.
So basically, to summarize what Curtis said, I know some of that can be a little bit confusing. We develop our projects on 2 major premises. One is, do we have sufficient customer interest to build? And that's where we're listing the various customers that have signed up for long-term commercial contracts. In other words, once this pipeline is built, there will be gas flowing on it in significant amounts from the first day. It's not about building and thinking or hoping someone might use it. It's based on long-term signed binding agreements with the utilities that we mentioned, local distribution companies, that they're going to use this project. That's how we know it's real and people are interested in using the pipe. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the regulatory piece. I'll talk about it in just a minute. We have to design a project that is able to be permitted by the regulatory agencies that are part of oversight of natural gas pipelines. So the FERC is the lead federal agency, and what we put together here is a schedule that we're working with FERC on to develop our project. And currently, we're right here in this pre-filing stage. And we're going to be in this pre-filing stage until this fall. What pre-filing means, it's an opportunity for public dialogue and discussion, and town meetings like this, open houses, which we've already held, additional open houses, which we're going to have. The FERC will have public hearings on the project this summer, and it is intended to help define and refine the project based upon, in large part, public input. So the input that you have here tonight, the input that you may have already contributed to FERC, and I'll point out our docket number here. I encourage you to go to the FERC website, ferc.gov, ferc.gov, and sign up for this docket number on the FERC, in the FERC process on the website, and you will get all of the information that is filed on this project that we file, comments that are filed by the public, have all come to you at your email free of charge. You'll also see on that free of charge, you can access the resource reports we filed last week, about 2,100 pages of documents related to this project, including maps, detailed project maps. But it's all free and available for you to download or to print out or to just look at on the FERC website. We encourage you to do that, as well as comment. So, we have not yet filed actually for permits from the FERC, to the FERC, or to the applicable state agencies. That is anticipated to happen this fall. And then we anticipate about a year or so of review by the agencies at the state and federal level. Environmental impact statements will be conducted, which will further refine the project. We anticipate those to be complete, and this is all at the discretion of the agencies. This is our estimation of the schedule. By the end of 2016, early 2017, some initial construction activity starting at that time, and gas flowing in service for the winter heating season of 2018. Well, that's our preliminary schedule at this time. There is extensive oversight over natural gas pipelines. I mentioned the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that's the lead federal agency. There are also other federal agencies. Two of the major ones are the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The state also has a significant role, the state of New Hampshire. The Department of Environmental Services, DES, will have a major environmental permitting role, as will the Site Evaluation Committee, the entity that governs siting of infrastructure in the state. So we'll be filing for the applicable permits on a federal and state level concurrently this fall. Consultations have begun with these agencies, but we haven't yet filed our formal applications. That is forthcoming. This is a copy of the project map to give you an idea of the overall scope of the project. This is a 30 or 36-inch buried pipeline. You saw some photos of restored right-of-way. And it's really an expansion of our existing system. The black lines represent our current system. The large colored line represents our expanded system, and these other lines, like light blue and yellow, represent other major natural gas pipeline systems in the region. So our project will be an expansion of the black lines, our system, starting here in Pennsylvania in the shale region that we talked about earlier, continuing on through New York, and this will be constructed parallel to an existing or future, actually a future approved pipeline, the Constitution Pipeline. Then we'll co-locate, which is adjacent to or within the existing corridor of our existing system from Wright, New York, coming into Massachusetts. We'll then co-locate on the purple with an existing power line system, which is also what we come into New Hampshire and co-locate all the way to Drake, Massachusetts. So, what that means is that about 90% of this proposed 400-mile plus route, over 70 miles of which is in New Hampshire, will be co-located. And Mark's going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about the construction process, but co-location does mean adjacent to or within existing utility board. I mentioned the FERC review process. I won't read all of these different bullets here, but it does show extensive opportunity for public input. I mentioned the scoping meetings and the open houses, and you can submit comments online in writing, and we encourage you to do that. And we really do encourage an interaction with the FERC staff and the FERC docket, because you can learn a lot about not just this project, but other projects. I encourage you to go look at their overall pipeline regulatory process, as well as other projects that have recently been undergoing this certification process from FERC. These are the towns that will some way be part of the Northeast Energy Direct footprint, as well as an overview map in New Hampshire of our project. Mark?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Hamrich. I'm the project manager for Kinder Morgan, working on the Northeast Energy Direct project. I'm going to talk about construction and a few other technical items for the next few minutes. As far as pipeline construction progress, the way we plan our pipeline projects, we break the project, which is over 400 miles total, into spreads. So we may have a 40 or 50 mile spread. So you'd have a contractor with a spread of equipment and personnel doing the project. And as they do it, it's broken into crews. So these crews work in a wagon train effect as they come through the process. So when they start, the first thing is construction staging. And then what this diametric shows you is it goes through, and it just graphically shows you how the stages work. So the first is the tree clearing, and then there's some grading, and then there's trenching, and then there's stringing the pipe, where you bring the pipe out on the right of way, and the pipe's welded all above ground, and then the pipe using these side booms is lowered into the trench. Then there's select backfill put back on the trench, and then there's, once it's backfilled, then it's pressure tested, higher than the operating pressure is going to be. That water is dewatered, then it's going to be restoration or revegetation, and you'll see it back to the, just a cleared right of way. That's some of the pictures Alan had shown. As far as doing the work, we've got our right-of-way team that can start from the very beginning. They're probably the team that has the most contact with the property owners and landowners. You may have been contacted already if you're a landowner for survey permission. We've got an experienced team that we work with. Jim in the front row here is our right-of-way manager, and he's got some of his team up front here. So if there's questions later, we can talk even after the presentation if we need to. One of the things they start out with is the survey permission. That's the phase we're in now, is just trying to get access to properties to gather information to help us put our environmental reports together, help us locate the pipeline and make a final routing, or at least make some route adjustments on the line. Then there would eventually be easement negotiations, and then they stay with us through construction and all the way through follow-up and restoration. One of the special construction techniques we talk about, we use, is horizontal directional drilling. We don't have any planned as yet in Rindge. We do have plans for major river crossings on the project. It's starting with the Hudson River in New York, Connecticut River in Massachusetts. We've got the Merrimack River we cross in New Hampshire. We also cross it going back into Massachusetts. But what this technique is, it's a non-intrusive method of installing pipe subsurface by setting up on each side of the resource. And you drill a pilot hole along your profile. That profile will be deep enough not to impact the resource. Sometimes we're 30, 25, 30, 40 feet below the resource. And then you would have to, of course, we're looking at putting in a 36-inch pipeline. So to put in a 36-inch pipeline, you need a larger hole. You would ream that hole out. It may take 2 or 3 ream passes. And then your curvature is designed where your pipe will actually be pulled back through this hole and in place. There is one planned compressor station in New Hampshire right now. The primary site is in New Ipswich. We've got 3 or 4 sites identified we're looking at. It would take a site, we like to get a site of about 50 to 150 acres to site the compressor stations. This is an 80 to 90,000 horsepower compressor station. This is a rendering. We wanted to show what this type of station would look like. And this is about 22 acres fenced in area once it's constructed. So if the larger site we get, we can have buffers around it. This also, just to put it in perspective, these buildings are approximately 47 feet high at the peaks and about 72 feet high on the exhaust stacks there. There's a lot of environmental considerations. As Alan pointed out, there's a lot of permits. This is a long process. There's a lot of environmental considerations that we start right at the very beginning when we develop our route. We consider not only the landowner concerns and the land use, but all the environmental concerns that we have to consider during the siting of the process. And we have to conduct field surveys. So part of these surveys that we're looking to do, besides a civil survey, to tie in where is the home, where's the well, where's fences, where's roads. We also have our environmental teams look at threatened and endangered species, wetland and water bodies, and cultural resources. And then we have an environmental compliance program during construction. We carry on with all once it's permitted, we go through and we have to comply with all those permits. And it's a diligent effort to compile the permits and ensure that we use our best management practices and we adhere to all the commitments we make during the siting process. And then as far as restoration or revegetation, we continue monitoring this. We've got projects we've done 3-4 years ago. We continue monitoring until we've got everything in place, all the sign-offs from landowners, all the permit agencies, and we've got that restored to the best possible condition we can in accordance with the permits. I know pipeline safety is an issue. I'm sure we'll get some questions on pipeline safety. Kinder Morgan is committed to pipeline safety. It's one of our backbones of how we do that as a project manager. We manage safety, personal safety, pipeline safety during design of the project, from the start out of design through the operation. Once the system's installed, we'll have a gas control center monitoring the system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've got this SCADA system where we have communications with the pipeline so we know what our operating pressures are and what's going on in the pipeline. We have operations personnel that do aerial flights, typically once a month, sometime every 2 weeks in certain areas. We also have above ground marker signs that show where the pipeline is. We're looking to get a 50-foot easement to maintain and keep some clearance. We'll have yellow top marker posts that says do not dig, call either us or call 811. We've also got a public awareness programs where we've got a damage prevention team. We work with the local responders for training. We have public awareness training yearly. We work with them on where our pipeline facilities are, what to do in case of an emergency. And also our damage prevention team, anytime there's an 811 call, they go out and they mark that pipeline so nobody does any digging or any kind of construction activity near that pipeline without operations being involved. And the last thing I want to talk about is the cathodic protection system. We try for a perfect pipeline when we install, but if the coating's not perfect, we put a cathodic protection system on, which is basically putting reduced current on the pipe that will have an anode system so that metal doesn't ever leave that pipe. The anode system and the electrical current protects that pipe. As far as the routing at Rindge, we have 8.9 miles. It is all co-located on the power line. I believe there's 73 landowners that we're looking at now, and that's on a survey corridor. What we did is we identified a 400-wide survey corridor. We're not going to use 400 feet wide to build, but we're looking at 400 feet with landowners so we can go out and survey and pick the best location for our route. And as far as estimated taxes upon completion, it's over $1 million at the start of the project based on the evaluation of the assets that's put in.
We should have, as handouts, more detailed alignment sheets, right? The passed out outside? Okay. And in addition to those alignment sheets, as I mentioned, there are publicly available maps on the FERC website, and we'll certainly be happy to provide additional maps for anyone who might want those. This is just to give a general overview from a very high-level perspective of the mapping. There are significant benefits to pipeline construction projects from an economic development perspective. We anticipate about 3,000 jobs to be part of this project. We've made agreements with the trade unions in New England, including New Hampshire, that this will be a union project. So they will be recruiting from the union locals, including New Hampshire, for the workforce. And they are the best trained and best capable workers in the industry. We also anticipate significant tax revenue to be part of the project, about $11.2 million annually. These are property taxes based upon the valuation of the asset itself, the pipe. And you saw over $1 million here in Rindge is what we're estimating for those taxes to be here. The lasting impact of any major expansion of a pipeline project is additional delivery of product, in this case natural gas. So we anticipate Liberty Utilities, as Curtis mentioned, expanding their footprint across New Hampshire and expanding gas delivery to areas that don't currently have it, and also enhancing reliability to areas that do. So that's a big part of the reason that we are proposing the current location of the pipe as configured. We also commit as a company, as we have for the last 50 years in New Hampshire, to be good partners in the community, to work with the emergency responders, to have lots of public meetings and open conversations about our project, and as I mentioned, we'll be good partners in the community. I went quickly through those last slides because I know you all have questions. I'm suspecting you do. So at this point, Board of Selectmen will be happy to respond to questions.
I'd appreciate if you want to ask a question, you can come up to the center microphone, just form a line. We'll appreciate if the Rindge residents to come up and do this, as it affects this town, and this is our meeting. And the landowners most certainly should take preference and jump right up and ask questions. Do introduce yourself, let us know what town you're from, and then ask your question or state your comment. Hopefully we'll keep it down to one question per. We'll try and get through everybody, and if we do, we'll let you come up and ask more questions. So if anybody wants to ask questions, just go on up to this center microphone and you can ask the questions.
Good evening. My name is Ron Hansen, and my wife and I are directly impacted by this. Your plan shows the proposed gas line crossing directly underneath the power line adjacent to our house. What additional protections are taken? And please comment on this. The majority of the line is parallel to the existing right-of-way, but we seem to be stuck with this thing crossing right underneath the high voltage 38,000 line.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. During construction, as far as the plan, the reason we've crossed, and we've crossed a few areas across the state, was to get on the better side of the power line for a longer distance, because our co-location, we want to use as much of the power line easement as we can to impact outside. But from a construction standpoint, crossing under, number one, we're working with the Eversource, but it's common practice. What we'll do is when we have our equipment, we'll make sure that we have clearance distance from the wires to the equipment. So we may have to change how we operate our equipment through those crossovers. Also, while we're working near the power lines or crossing underneath, there is straight voltage that comes down from the power line. So all the equipment that we use and the pipe that you saw that was in the picture would all be grounded. So should there be any straight current, all that equipment, all the trucks, all the pipe and material has to be grounded during the construction process. Once the pipeline's installed, I talked earlier a little bit about cathodic protection that's on the pipe that is an anode bed that it prevents any corrosion. The metal would come back to the pipe from the anode versus leaving. Well, when you construct or then operate a pipeline underneath, whether it's crossing or adjacent, you have straight current that comes down, and you've got different, you've got to take your resistivity of your soil. Long story short, there's another method we use, which is called AC mitigation, for the AC current mitigation, where you're putting another zinc strip in the pipe, along the pipe, in the ditch, offset of the pipe, that would mitigate any kind of short between the power line and the pipeline. Also, where there's valves or whatever, we would have pads to protect our people from operating on the straight current. So there's an extensive design that goes along with both during the construction and the operation of the pipeline, either adjacent to the power line or crossing underneath the power line.
So there are induced currents from the field of the high voltage power line to the pipeline at that pinch point?
They are, all along they are, and there's different there also. But it's, even when it's outside, even when you're out there now, there's a certain current that's in the resistivity. So we have to isolate that from the pipeline.
So is concrete encasement considered at these points and going underneath the state highway and town roads?
There will be typically concrete around the pipe on the highways for protection, primarily for third-party damage. In the old days, they used to encase it with a different sleeve of steel, but that causes a shielding of the cathodic protection. So modern technology with our coatings, we have concrete coating, typically under the roads, or an abrasive-resistant coating for that. We're still in the design phases, but that wasn't one of the considerations. That wouldn't help anything on the pipe along the power line.
Well, arguably, it would give additional physical protection.
Physical, but we're not worried about the physical there. It's more just the electrical interference to make sure we handle that.
Okay, for the record, I'm worried about the physical.
Because of the traffic with the power line? Okay.
I'm worried about the additional physical protection for the pipeline system at the pinch point underneath the power line in close proximity to my home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan Briscoe, Rindge, New Hampshire. Can you hear me okay? Okay, Jan Briscoe, Rindge, New Hampshire. Okay, I off-roaded Bradford, Pennsylvania, and last year I was out in the hills there behind Bradford and came across a compressor station. It was about the size of a two-car garage. I could hear that thing a mile and a half away, and it was just a small diesel 671 Jimmy. Okay, so I guess I don't think you people are telling us what these compressors, especially when they're 80 or 90,000 horsepower, the noise they make 24/7. They can't live with it. I can't see how a person could live. Now, how could you justify your statements around being near something like this compressor station to say you're not going to lose value in your house? How the hell do you sell a house next to a compressor station?
Well, as far as Bradford County, I can't speak for that. I know our company operates compressor stations there. I don't want to speculate. That may be a producer compressor station. I don't know if it was close to the building. I don't know if they had any noise attenuation designed into it. So there's, could have been like a truck running out there. But the compressor stations that we're going to design, we've got a 55 dB requirement at the nearest noise receptor at the boundary of the property. And that's basically us talking here, and maybe in a restaurant talking, if you look up on the scale of what 55 dBs are. So it's a very strict noise criteria that we have to comply with during our regulations for our permitting, and then we either engineer it, we try to site it in the proper place, we try to engineer it, we engineer it for noise, we keep our pipes underground, keep our engines in buildings, and wrap piping when we need to, and then should we build it and we don't meet our requirements, then we're committed by permit to make sure we keep that going. There's other compressor stations that we operate in Avard, Massachusetts, in other areas, and they don't sound like that.
Well, I've seen videos and heard tapes of one of yours in New York State, and people can't live there. Okay? So, I guess my position is I don't want you in my backyard, and in fact, if you put a compressor station in my backyard, I'll sue you.
damage caused to our homes and wells. Once you decide you're going to be doing this, I'm in an incineration zone, and you know what happens when it's all done. And I'm just...
Good evening, Barbara, and I'm Jim Hartman. I'm in the land department. And Barbara, part of the process that Mark touched upon in the presentation is the acquisition process that we go through. Right now, we're interested in getting surveyed, and then we'll come and work with every landowner whose project is potentially impacted by the pipeline. And we'll work with you one-to-one to go through and identify your concerns. And if it's a well, or if it's your foundation because of possible blasting, then we would agree in writing that we'd be responsible for any damage that we did to your well or to your foundation as a result of blasting. What we would do is we would do an investigation beforehand by third-party independent company to investigate the well. Give you a copy of that. And then after we were done, do another follow-up investigation and share that with you. So if there was a difference, damage, we would absolutely be responsible for that, and we put that in writing as well.
Does that mean that I allow you on my property? And I do not want you on my property.
And I understand, that's of course, if we get to that point and we're negotiating for a right-of-way. Absolutely, that's correct.
Question.
Say, can you turn the volume up? We're having trouble hearing out here.
Hi, my name is Paul. My house is right on the power lines. I'm putting my house up for sale this spring. Given full disclosure, how do I explain to a prospective buyer that my house is in what is known as the incineration zone? Given full disclosure. Did I stump you?
Well, what we're talking about, one thing is we get a lot of discussion on incineration zone, and it's really not a pipeline term. What I think people are referring to is a term that the DOT has in the code, which is called potential impact radius. And what it is, it's a term that they use to identify certain high consequence areas, and it plays into our integrity management program. So I just wanted to clarify that. There is a term called potential impact radius, and it's, versus incineration zone.
Hence my question.
And so the question,
So then getting into property values, Paul, and as far as full disclosure, you're welcome to have whoever is interested, whether it's the real estate agent.
No, I'm not welcome to. I'm obligated to.
Well, the point I was getting at is you can have them call us, and we would be happy to talk to them about the project, about information, about making them feel more knowledgeable about
The same way you're reassuring me.
Well, I'm trying to share information to help you understand. And as far as property values go, Paul, there's been several studies that have been done, not by Tennessee Gas, by third-party appraisers. And they're online. We actually cite them and put them on our website. And they indicate that a property that has a pipeline on it and a property nearby of comparable value has negligible difference between property values. And that's by an independent study that recites that. And again, we'd be happy to discuss, if you share to pass our information along to any prospective buyer, which I do talk to prospective buyers many times about our pipeline. We have developer handbooks, we've got information about safety, and we would share that. We would assist, you might say, about educating a prospective purchaser.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I got one more question for the guy in the green shirt.
I don't want to hold up the procedure.
I know us little people don't amount to a little pin. I watched them drown 3 flagging towns in Massachusetts
Wait.
for flooding reservoir. I didn't want the power line through my property, but it's there anyway. But I do hope you have the courtesy not to use herbicides on the property after you get it.
And good evening, thank you. And we don't use herbicides to maintain the right-of-way. We use tractors, brush hogs to mow the right-of-way. One of the pictures that we did show this evening was a valve area where it's fenced off. We couldn't get a tractor in there. With the landowner's permission, we would ask to spray in there. And we would also spray at our compressor station. But on private property along the right-of-way, we mow with a tractor.
Well, the power line wasn't supposed to spray, but they tried it once. And they don't do it anymore because when I came to, they already said they wouldn't. But that one trip ruined an awful lot of lady slippers and mayflowers and trilliums and mountain laurel, and we've been appreciated.
Sure, and we'll, again, with the negotiation process that I talked about, we'll put that in writing for you. So we'll make that part of the document. So we'll agree to that.
Thank you.
welcome.
I have a question.
I'm not quite sure where I'm going here.
You talked about the acquisition
Am I biased?
and dealing with private property owners. How do you deal with publicly held lands? Do you just take it? Because the selectmen cannot grant right-of-ways or easements over publicly held lands without a town vote granting us permission to do that. And I don't see that happening here, quite frankly. And the plotted plan goes through a tremendous amount of conservation land through, Fitzwilliam aquifers, in Rindge, there's several pieces of town property that it crosses.
I'm waiting to go.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, it's all part of the site evaluation process. So the opinion of the town, conservation lands, state protected lands, all of that will be taken into account in the overall site evaluation. So at the end of the day, it's not up to Kinder Morgan or Tennessee Gas, the exact siting of the project. We propose, the state and federal governments approve. So during the application process, I'm sure if the town takes a position, as I suspect you will, that will be part of their overall evaluation process. At the end of the day, they'll make the decision.
Hi, my name is Pete Dufresne. I'm from Rindge. I heard one word, drink it. Why don't you just keep it in Massachusetts?
Good question.
Was it Peter? Peter, that's a very good question. We get that asked of us all the time. The reason that we're going across this way is because we're hitting customers in northwest Massachusetts. We're coming up into Liberty Utilities service territory, back down into Drake, where we want to get access to our existing system, because what that does overall is it creates basically like a loop that allows us additional reliability to serve, say, Liberty Utilities. Right now, the only gas that serves Liberty Utilities is coming from one direction, one source. By bringing it this way, you have two sources in case there was a reason to shut down the facility for maintenance purposes or, God forbid, a catastrophe. So by getting into this, we not only do that, but we also feed the north end of our system, or what we like to refer to as a tail end of our system, and it provides increased pressure and deliveries all the way back through our existing system. So we analyze this in great detail. In order to move the most gas and serve the most customers at the lowest possible price in an effective manner and minimize disturbance to the fewest landowners, this was the path that made the most sense. In addition, by getting a large volume of gas to Drake it, what we call a transformative project, the reason that is because we're moving a large quantity of gas, low-cost gas. We then can serve on another pipeline called Maritimes and Northeast Pipeline, straight up into further parts of New Hampshire and the state of Maine, as well as we tap into an existing pipeline that comes over and serves Algonquin gas transmission system. So what we effectively are doing by moving this amount of gas is we're able to serve reliably virtually all the power generation facilities either directly through our pipe or indirectly through Algonquin gas transmission or Maritimes. So that's the reason. We're moving the most amount of gas where our customers have signed up and said we want to contract with you because it makes the most sense for our customers.
Well, I see your pipe down by Mass Pike is bigger. Why don't you just make it bigger on the other end of it and then just obsolete the one above?
It telescopes down, and like I was saying earlier, we analyzed looping. One of the alternatives that we identified was looping this particular line all the way up and continuing to do that. We had other alternatives such as the Mass Turnpike and a few other alternatives. This was actually one of the alternatives we evaluated early on when we originally proposed going through Massachusetts. The more we analyzed it, the more we looked at the requirements, the more we got feedback we got from legislators such as the PUC and the regulatory environment and the environmental folks, we decided to co-locate the facility, which Alan did a great job of talking about earlier.
Now, this is gonna go totally underground, right?
Except for the above-ground appurtenances such as meter stations or valve stations.
Well, you get an awful lot of blasting, because Rindge is full of granite.
It is, and you know, we've been serving New Hampshire.
Have you seen the power lines?
Absolutely. And we've been serving New Hampshire for a very long time. We know exactly what we're up against. Mark can do a good job. I'll hand it over to him to describe the controlled blasting. We're not blasting down deep like you would for to drill a well, what have you. It's a very controlled blasting process to basically clear our trench. That's it.
So you'll be doing a lot of backfilling.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the backfilling, we're gonna have to bring in some select backfill and probably dispose of rock.
So you're gonna change the land.
That's something we're gonna have to look at through that'll be part of the environmental assessment of what impact that will have should we displace some of the rock. We've built pipelines in several areas with the rock, but you're right, I've flown it, I've seen it. There is a lot of rock, can't dispute that. And that's, again, part of the environmental assessment, part of one of the resource reports is there, the geology and how that impacts what is afterwards.
As far as environmental goes, don't forget the animals that are in this town.
Absolutely. There's a lot of restrictions at times as to when we can construct, how we construct. All that'll be taken into account through this permitting process, through FERC, and through the siting evaluation committee.
Still, I want to know why you can't stay in Massachusetts.
Well, one of the things Curtis did say, number one, it's a lot longer, which, you know, you can get there. It's very grown along those pipelines. We've got 3 pipelines coming into the state. When you start getting to the eastern part of the state, there's just no place even to co-locate because there's housing and developments right up against the existing easements. So when we evaluated it, those areas, there really wasn't good ways to get into it, and you had to actually almost make new rights of way through there, and it was a lot longer and a lot more impact. Plus, as Curtis says, we didn't get to the market. So we did evaluate those alternatives during the FERC process. One of the resource reports, 10, is all about alternatives, and we're still having a discussion on those. So we had to justify why we chose this route over the other routes. We've not filed the final application yet, but that's all being considered as far as what the route is. And at this point, this is our preferred route that's been filed.
So, start to finish construction, how long would it take?
We've got a 2-year construction period to build the entire project from Pennsylvania through Massachusetts, New Hampshire. When we're looking at, say, when I talked about a spread, a 40-mile spread, that's probably a good 6 months, you know, as soon as the snow melts, starting now till in November, October timeframe. So we're going to size our spreads and our men and equipment. So it's probably about 6 months per spread. We're going to try not to work in the winter. But the whole project, we've got 2 years planned to put the whole project together construction-wise.
We move along, we've got 5 people on the line to ask questions here. Please limit it to 1 question. There's 5 to 6 people behind you.
Everybody here, there's 1 question. Nobody here wants this pipeline. No one here wants this pipeline. No one, any of these towns I know want this pipeline. I have 1 question. How do we stop you?
I think I've talked about how you should make your voices heard, because you know the Board of Selectmen certainly can make a statement. You as individuals can comment and make statements to the Federal Regulatory Commission. At the end of the day, it's not up to us. It's up to the regulators on what happens with this project. So I encourage you to express your concerns and issues directly to them. And you can do it very easily through meetings like this, through open houses. I encourage you to attend the scoping meetings where official comments will go on the record, and also to visit the FERC website and comment there. The key is, and we know this from experience, please go to the FERC website and take a look.
I don't have a computer, I don't have a cell phone.
Okay,
so.
but to my point, Go and look at when landowners make comments and the reaction that the regulators have to those comments. You have an important voice here, and the voice is heard by the regulators. We know that from experience. And that's why we want to, at the early stage here, try to address the concerns you have. Now, obviously, we're for the project, you're not for the project, but as much as we can have a dialogue here, we're going to try to do that.
There's got to be another direction if we go in. It can be rooted someplace else with less interference, I'm sure. I don't think we're looking at that much. I really don't think so. I think you're full of it.
Lisa Wiley, Rindge. I actually still do have two questions, I'm sorry. One is about the spraying. You had mentioned, sir, that you do not spray in the right-of-way, but when I went on your website, it said that you try not to spray in the right-of-way, and that you do absolutely spray around compressors. Can you tell us more about what herbicides are used to spray for those areas when they need it? And that's my first question. My second question is, you spoke also in your presentation about keeping this gas in New England. But I think we all know that it's far cheaper for you guys to be able to get lots more money by getting overseas. What can you guarantee us about how much will actually stay in New England?
Lisa, I'm going to try and answer your first question about the herbicides. And as I said, we will not be spraying herbicides on the right-of-way. And as I also said, I put that in writing for you. If the herbicides are used in an enclosed area, a valve area, which is 50 by 50 or so, that would need to be with the landowner's consent. So again, another opportunity if you don't want to spray. Before the spraying can be done, it has to get approved by I believe it's the state pesticides. I'm not exactly sure the entity. So it's all approved and oversight by the local agencies. I personally don't know the exact chemicals. They can change. If you want me to follow up with you, I would, but it may change from what was used last year at those fenced areas. But I'd be happy to share more information. The main point is that we're not spreading on the right of ways.
Can I just add, is there a way, like right now, do you guys have, does anybody have a phone with your stuff that you could find out what's the most commonly used herbicide that you're using predominantly right now at your compressor stations? I would love to just have the names.
I can't, but I will happy to follow up. The person that I would ask wouldn't be available now, and I'd be happy to follow up. So if I can get your name, if you visit with Mike or JR here in the front, I'll follow up with that information. You can share with the board, but I can certainly get that for you too.
Hi, Lisa. In terms of the LNG question, we are regulated by FERC. We're called a open access transport. Their requirement is that we cannot unduly discriminate who we sell capacity to. Right now, we have no LNG shippers that are willing to sign up, meet the terms and conditions that we require of any shipper. And that is a long-term binding agreement with a credit-worthy party. We don't have that. What we have are LDCs, local distribution companies, that have signed up and said, we need you to build this pipeline, otherwise we're running out of gas. We also have power generators that we're working with the various organizations and the stakeholders, the NESCOs, the ISO New England's. We anticipate a very, very healthy market coming from the power generation side. We know it's a slow process. This disconnect has been in place for a long time, but we're not allowed to discriminate against anyone here that wanted to sign up for a binding long-term agreement. We're obligated to sign up. We cannot guarantee that none of this gas will end up overseas. We just can't guarantee that. We terminate our project at Drake. That's where it terminates, and where they take it from there is up to other parties.
Hi, my name is Dean Emelo from here in Rindge. You say that this is clean energy. I used to own a home out by Montrose, Pennsylvania. If you ask those people out there if this is clean energy, they'll tell you how bad the groundwater is. And I've seen it firsthand. And when dairy farmers are actually trucking in water to feed their cattle, it's kind of pathetic. So I've seen that entire Susquehanna River Basin go right to crap. The gentleman that brought up the comment about the compressor, he's absolutely right. I've seen it firsthand. I've heard it firsthand from miles away. literally miles away. So I've got two follow-up questions. Number one, you say that my property value will not go down if that runs through the back of my property? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Question number two, would you mind this going through the back of your backyard?
No, I wouldn't mind, and I
Oh,
built.
okay, let me just stop you there, because after those two lies, I don't believe a thing that you say.
My name's Jason Polino. I serve on the planning board here at the town of Rindge. So I have a technical question in terms of constructability. As you know, the proposed path in town crosses several surface bodies of water. There are wetlands, there may not be lakes, but there are at least wetlands. And those feed known aquifers in town. The vast majority of folks here in town are on well water. And so there's a very large concern about aquifer contamination. My question for you is twofold, actually, two pieces. A, what is your preferred method in getting the pipeline sections through these aquifer areas, wetlands? And B, what is your QA and QC process as you do this construction?
First off, as far as the preferred method, as far as wetland crossings or whether they're officers, we would have to permit and we would do construction across the water bodies by, putting our filter fence and protecting anything from leaving the right of way as far as water quality downstream. So we have to maintain everything within the right of way. We're limited to 75 feet in these wetlands, and we use one of the primary ways is to use mats, equipment mats, if it's not too deep across there, and then trench, put the pipe in, carry the pipe in, drop the pipe will be concrete coated, backfill the pipe, remove the mats. There's some areas where you have to go out and trench, you can either bring in, you still always have to keep, we have to go through the Corps of Engineers and all the local permitting. Wetland permitting and wetland permitting is probably one of the most difficult processes to able to identify your construction process.
Yes.
And then as far as construction technique, another might be to what we call a push-pull, where you would dig the trench, the pipe would be welded up on top. On the upland, you bring it in, you have barrels strapped to it, concrete coated, sink.
So you're talking open excavation versus
we're
directional
talking,
drilling?
We're talking open excavation versus directional drilling for many of these. Now, there may be some where we can't do anything but the directional drilling process, but we haven't been able to evaluate in detail some of these areas because we're just getting started on our permitting and our requirements. As far as QA, QC, there's a big oversight as far as...
I'm sorry, let me stop you there just for the benefit of the audience. Quality control and quality assurance, that's what I'm asking for, QA, QC.
Yeah, quality control and quality assurance. So we'll have an inspection plan as far as our permits of construction, best management practice, all our permits. And what we're going to do is we will have, our contractors will be trained, all environmental training. They go through sometimes 2 days of training before they hit the right-of-way, safety and environmental training. That's one thing we do. All of our inspectors are qualified and certified, not only the environmental inspectors, but all the task inspectors have to go through the environmental and safety training. And then, during the construction, these inspectors are set to maintain the quality, the control during that, and document everything that happens during these crossings. We do daily reports to the agencies. We also have third-party agencies, sometimes, many times, FERC will have third-party monitors, possibly the state will have third-party monitors that are out there in these sensitive resources that we, of course, compensate, but they're independent. So it's quite a stringent process when it comes to those type of resources to cross.
But in terms of specific technical methods, there's nothing different than open excavations or cut and fill sections on top of a hill versus crossing these more sensitive.
With the more sensitive areas, you have time restrictions sometimes. You have buffer zones outside of where you can clear, when you can clear. I don't know, when you do stream crossings and whatever, you've got 48 hours on these streams. You sometimes do dam and pump. If you can dam up the resource here, pump around so that that ditch is dug in the dry. All the stream crossings, qualified as stream crossings, will be done in the dry. There won't be wet crossings. The wetlands you can do in the wet, but the stream crossings are dry crossings. Could be a flume across it and dig underneath. There's several techniques there. A lot of those are identified in the FERC upland and erosion control plan that we filed.
Okay. So we expect to see public disclosures and filings.
Absolutely. In fact, the standard requirements and what we know are in the FERC filing now. We've actually identified different techniques for different crossings. That's going to get more robust when we do our second filing in June. And our FERC filing application is in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter next year. It's pretty similar to the timing we'll do with this year. Sorry, lost you. This year. And then with the site and evaluation process. So those things, we also file Corps of Engineer permits and all our federal permits this year also.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Lister. I'm from Rindge. I just had a question, but I need to up front say a couple of things. I know you say that you only have the project and it's all about, you know, whether FERC approves it or not, and we have the power. But I think in FERC's history, and they're totally financed by energy companies, they've refused 2 pipeline projects. I don't think either of those belong to Tennessee Gas. I've seen the ads in the newspaper where you take credit for having, Kinder Morgan does for having a pipeline in New Hampshire since 1952, the one that runs up to Concord. But that was built by Tennessee Gas, I think, long before Kinder ever met Morgan knew who Tennessee Gas was. And I know before you hired Lucas Meyer, your website said the total number of employees you had in New Hampshire was 0. When it comes to the union, you say these are all good union jobs hired out through locals here, but the unemployment rate in New Hampshire is actually pretty low, and I don't think those unions have 3,000 unemployed qualified people to work for them to build your pipeline. And I think the vast majority of people will be brought in from somewhere else. It's just pipeline builders won't be here for very long, make a big mess while they're here. They do everywhere else they go. I'm aware of that. And, but you get to avoid responsibility because you say, oh, you signed a deal with local unions, it's all good, local union jobs. That doesn't play very well here because all the construction people in this area aren't union members anyway. And finally, this whole scheme seemed to be ratepayer financing, but I know I've heard Alan Ford say, well, we don't need ratepayer financing for this, we would build it anyway. But I haven't heard Alan Ford say, we will refuse ratepayer financing for this pipeline and we will build it ourselves and we will pay for it. I want to know why you guys are so quick to take credit for things you don't deserve and so willing to avoid responsibility for the things that you're responsible for.
Well, obviously you've been following the project a bit.
The day after you announced it on election day, I got out the map, something you guys wouldn't do for the town. Looked up every property that the power line crossed over, called all the phone numbers I could find to tell the landowner. So yeah, I've been following.
Good. We encourage that. And the good thing about this process is you can follow. And everything that is filed from a regulatory perspective, as Mark has mentioned, you could go and review it yourself, including detailed maps. I encourage you to do that.
Have you ever had a project turned down by FERC, Al?
Get that question a lot. And how many projects do we pursue with FERC? Hundreds. We have projects in various stages of development all across the country. The different model that our company has is that we do the work up front to determine whether or not a project is viable. So we're still in that process right now. You know as well as I do that we have not filed for our FERC application. We have to meet the commercial requirements and the regulatory requirements internally to be certain that this project can be approved. We won't file with FERC unless we are confident we do. And once we do file, we haven't had a project rejected by FERC, by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I'm talking about the commissioners. We have not had a project rejected. The reason for that is because of our model and our planning and doing the work up front. How many projects have never made it to that point? Hundreds of projects haven't. But But we don't take that final step of FERC application until we're confident we have a project that can be approved. And we have not done that yet as we stand here today. We're confident we're going to do it, but we haven't done it yet.
Okay. After Kendra's presentation, Mary Ann Harper is going to do a small presentation showing ways you can get involved in fighting this ridiculous thing. Thank you for your time, guys.
Thanks for your time.
Hello, I'm Pam Schultz from Rindge. I'm nervous. The snowmobilers ride on the right-of-way all winter long. Are they still going to be able to?
Can't hear you.
The snowmobilers ride on the right-of-way all winter long. Will they still be able to use the right-of-way after you've done building your pipeline?
That shouldn't change. However, Tennessee Gas can't authorize it because we don't have the right to authorize it. We only have the right to maintain and operate a pipeline. So if the current property owner is authorizing it, then they would be the people that are in control of the snowmobile. So snowmobile activity does not damage the pipeline.
Okay, and are you going to stay for the New Hampshire Pipeline Awareness presentation tonight? You didn't stay for it today, this morning at the State House. Are you going to stay for it this evening so you can hear our side, a full presentation?
I know that we're going to another meeting shortly, so we won't be here. We are going to New Ipswich.
Right, so you didn't hear it this morning because you all got up and left, and you're not going to hear it tonight either. So how are you going to hear our side?
They don't want to.
We hear your side from all the landowners and everyone that's speaking tonight, and every meeting that we go to, we are very attentive to your concerns.
But you don't stay for our presentation, and it's incredible, and you should hear it.
Thank you.
No thanks.
Lynn Mello, Rindge. This wasn't my original question, but this is a follow-up to a previous question. Oh, this is a follow-up to a previous question. And what I want to know, is it Kinder Morgan's intent or the intent of any company associated with Kinder Morgan, either directly or indirectly, to export this product? I have listened to a number of people who fear that we won't benefit in New Hampshire, or in fact in New England at all, and it is your intent to primarily export this gas. Is that true in any way?
Thank you, Lynn. Let me try to address that in two statements. What Alan was saying about earlier is we don't control the gas. We don't drill it, we don't sell it, we don't do anything with the gas except move it. So what happens to the gas molecules are up to our customers. Liberty Utilities decides where it comes into our pipeline, where it exits. We just are obligated to move it from point A to point B based on what our customers ask for. So consequently, we don't have any control over, nor do we have any desire to move our gas, because we don't have any gas, to any LNG exporter. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to rephrase this, we are obligated to sell capacity on our pipe to anyone who can meet the criteria, because we're an open access transporter. We are not in the business of exporting gas, selling gas, buying gas, or drilling for gas. And in terms of the benefits that may come to Rindge, the selectman, Roberta, said earlier, we'll never get gas. It'll be too long. That's possible. That's really possible. It's up to a local distribution company, a company that distributes gas. All they do is they pay for a tap into our pipeline, and then they can distribute gas. That's up to Liberty Utilities. And also in terms of savings, even if you don't get gas right away, you're going to see it in the form of a lower electricity bill. What is happening to your electricity prices, they continue to go up, and the only way you're going to drop those down is by adding capacity. It really is the only way you're going to lower your energy prices significantly.
One more quick question, I know we're
Sure, no.
one. My original question was, no offense to our fire department, absolutely not, but in the event of some kind of accident, fire or something like that, particularly forest fire, if there is some kind of an accident or explosion associated with any of these events of the pipeline, how would that be handled?
Well, as far as the emergency response from the pipeline side, should there be a rare event of a leak or a failure on the system, the pipeline is going to be designed with shut-off valves, so the valves would shut, the gas that's in that section of pipeline would have to vent. It doesn't always start the fire, okay? It doesn't always flame. And the pipeline, what we work with on the emergency responders is that the pipeline company would operate the pipeline, the valves, isolate it, and then the emergency response would handle the evacuation and any other follow-up to the pipeline on that. So we would work with the emergency responders, have emergency preparedness plans, and plan that.
Okay, thank you.
Just shut the gas.
Basically, the pipeline company shuts the gas off, and then the gas dissipates to the atmosphere.
Maureen Thompson, and I am within the 400 feet of this proposal. I've heard about wells. I've been there. I've been living where I have been for 20 years, and there's been a few houses that have gone up in the area. Every time a house goes up, my well is affected. How can you guarantee me that I'm still going to have water when you start digging?
And Maureen, we talked about that a little, but we're going to make sure, we're going to put it in writing, that once we start construction, that we're going to test your well, and that we're going to make sure that if there's a change, that we're going to be responsible. So if for some reason you lost your well, then we'd come back in with a third party and drill you a new well. So
That's if I allow you on my property. I don't allow you on my property because I feel if I allow you on my property, it's implied consent that I agree with this, and I totally do not.
well, that would be much further on in the process because we couldn't get onto your property without some permission. So it would be much later in the process. Right now, nothing's going to happen to your property. We're not doing anything. And all that we'd ask now is for survey permission. And one of the things survey permission would do is we'd be able to identify the location of your well. Right now, we don't know. Your well could be right where our ditch line is. And not knowing that you haven't given us permission, we respect that. But if you give us permission, then we can identify your well. We can talk to you about other concerns that you might have, the location of the house, maybe some tree screening, items that are important to you, but we haven't had the chance to identify, which we would identify, and if we needed to move the pipeline or minimize construction impact, we would work that out.
I also have a farm. There's no way my horses will tolerate this. Are you going to move them and board them for 6 months while you're doing this?
That's one option. Also, we would look at a different pasture, and possibly not knowing, again, those are the type of things that help us minimize the impact to you. So knowledge is important because your horses are extremely important to you. We recognize that. You might know, and I have to speak in hypotheticals because I don't know you or your property, but there may be, you may have extra land that could pasture. That by putting up another fence, we could isolate the horses from the work area. They'd still be safe and secure. You'd still have access to them, and we could still facilitate our construction. That would certainly be done at our expense, but that's part of the process that we would go through in working with you to make sure that the pipeline construction interfered with you as little as possible.
I don't have any extra property to put them on.
Then maybe we'd have to rent something from a neighbor, still nearby to you. So yes, those are all the things that we would do to work with you to minimize that interruption.
You said that you wouldn't mind having one go through in your backyard?
That's correct.
Would you like to buy my house?
Maybe. I don't know if my wife is going to.
My name is Joseph DeRusso, and I live Roberts Road, and I'm listening to you talk about water quality, which is what I'm concerned with. I'm holding a settlement between Tennessee Gas Pipeline and the Department of Environmental Protection in Pennsylvania, where you constructed the 300 line in 2011 and 2012. Now, you were cited for 73 instances, separate instances, of illegal dump sites that damaged local water resources, including some that had been designated high quality or exceptional value waters, such as our aquifers right here in Rindge. 73 times. Now, this settlement was signed December 22nd, 2014. What did those poor people do for 4 years without water?
Let's put that one in, and thanks for bringing that. Let's put that in perspective. I was the project manager involved with that project. That was in 2011. It was in the Bradford, Susquehanna area of Pennsylvania. That was the year that Lee came in, Tropical Storm Lee, probably dumped 12, 14 inches of water. Shortly thereafter, the Irene came through, dumped it. We had all our erosion control devices in. We had everything in place. And it was, I don't want to say an act of God, but it was a catastrophic event. That was a 25-year storm that came through. And what happened is that pipeline, those things, everything, the Susquehanna River was brown, the Delaware River was brown, the whole state, everything from those rains. But yes, we did have water that our erosion control devices could not handle and left that right of way. And yes, the DEP came in, and if you saw what those violations were, because water left that right of way and erosion and soil left that right of way. As far as construction, we got in there, we cleaned up things, we did everything we could on that construction site to put it back in place. Spent a couple weeks doing that, continued building the pipeline, finished restoration. The next spring, we're still monitoring that. The next year, that pipeline was back in place. So what they call by the regulation a pollution event is if you've got it set up, 14 inches of rain come and breaks it, then we did control that, and that's what those were. These weren't violations you might think of, okay, Tennessee Gas took something and dumped something in the river. And the reason it took 3 years is there was negotiations on what was the damages, what were the fines, and it was a joint agreement between Tennessee and them. And there was no wells impacted, no water sources, no damages downstream, no wildlife, nothing like that. It was normal. If you saw our pipeline right of way, I'm not trying to justify it, you looked off the right of way 2 miles away, everything was flooded. I mean, I'm from Binghamton, New York. The whole town was flooded. That whole area was flooded. So that's the event that those happened. Should it happen like that? No. When we did the next project, 2 years later, we put in a more storm event process where we took mats out of the streams, beefed up our erosion controls, so we had a lesson learned from that, and we tightened it up when we do construction. So we took a lesson learned from a rare event to get better on how we beef up those controls.
Alan Faber. I have 2 questions, one for a friend and one for myself. One, many people in town have experienced a problem with you folks. They've signed a do not survey, and you folks have come and surveyed with people from out of state, come out to their property, even then told not to, and then they come back another day and they survey again. How can you, the company, you're not doing a good job. They say, oh, we didn't get the word. I'm not sure about that. I think you guys got to do a better job on doing it. You're not doing a good job on that. We say don't survey, we don't want you on the property. And you're not doing that. We got Mississippi plates in places and going around town, out-of-state people, not acceptable. Second question, what is your OSHA rating as far as safety is concerned for employees? You know, as far as citations, as far as fines, as far as record of taking care of your employees in that area?
I'm going to answer the first question now, and we can always do a better job. I can always do a better job. But the survey activities that have been occurring so far are control points on the public rights of way. And well,
they've been on people's property.
Well, and they shouldn't be, because the survey company that's working for us has not been out on the power line corridor in New Hampshire. I know that the only work that's supposed to have been happening is control points. Now, control point means a triangulation, and they're setting the triangulation on the edge of the pavement, on the road shoulder. And if they're going past that, Al, and I'd be happy to talk to you some more, and learn of those situations, but they shouldn't be. So you're right, we can always do better. As far as the plates and the location, those are all Hatchmont McDonald employees. Hatchmont McDonald is based here in Holyoke, Massachusetts. They also have offices throughout the country. They have manpower throughout the country. So they're pulling in their employees throughout the country. So they're local Massachusetts company, but national offices. So they are local. And as far as the incident here.
Yeah, as far as the employee, we track total recordable incidence rates, the TRR, the days away incidence rates, the vehicle incidence rates. We track them for not only the gas pipeline that we represent for Kinder Morgan, we've got a CO2 group, we've got a terminals group, we've got a products group. Out of that, those incident rates are part of our measures. We're measured, I think, 35 metrics we keep up with on a monthly basis and over a 3-year period. And we outperform our peers in 30 of 35 of those metrics. It's on kindermorgan.com. Go to our safety record. You can pull up, you can see what our TIR is, what we do, but we're very serious about prevention of personal injury. If you come on, you ask anyone that's done construction on our jobs, as far as personal protective equipment, safety training, not only for the company employees, but for the contractor employees that work with us. So our record is tracking better than industry average. We're not where we want to be. We want to, you'd like to be the best, and we continue to strive for that. So earlier I talked about environmental performance. Safety is the same thing. It's taken very seriously, tracked, and continuously improved.
Hi, Pat Martin from Rindge. I wanted to have you address the issue of more gas will mean lower electricity prices. And in particular, since you used Gordon Van Wiley's quotes at the beginning of your presentation, he also has said that part of the problem that New England is facing is because we've become so dependent on natural gas. Right now, 52% of our electricity is generated using natural gas. Adding more natural gas supply now only makes us go deeper and more dependent on natural gas and tied closer to any fluctuations in the market. I mean, we could have a strike that could bring us to our knees, if people stopped working on the wells in Marcellus Shale. So, where we're already 52%, any more natural gas makes us less diverse, not more diverse. And I would like you to answer how that could possibly translate into cheaper electricity and whether you've ever seen it anywhere else.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. The reason that electricity prices go down is because gas prices go down. Anywhere in the United States of America that you add pipeline capacity, prices go down. That's just laws of supply and demand. The city of Chicago has 7 interstate pipelines. That's what we are. We're an interstate pipeline. They have 7 serving one city. It's a big city, huge city. But you only have 5 serving 6 states. You don't have the infrastructure. So what is happening is when you add pipe, you lower gas prices. Because you run so much on gas-fired generation, your electricity prices go down. Every study out there says that. Now here's the thing on the generation. I think in America we'd all like to just be able to turn on our lights and heat our homes and power our cars without any pollution, any problems whatsoever. That'd be a wonderful world to live in. The ISO New England, they've analyzed this. They said, listen, we got a huge problem.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I just want to interrupt because I know time's running out, but the fact of the matter is that the Midwest generates 62% of its electricity with coal and a very small fraction with natural gas. And in fact, they are not committing to more building of natural gas infrastructure. They're committing to large-scale wind projects.
Okay. I don't want to argue with you, but you cannot beat your environmental regulations by running on coal. You just can't. It's the most polluting product you can use besides fuel oil.
We only use 3% coal in New England.
But here's the situation. The ISO New England says you only got limited options to generate electricity. Canadian hydro is a fantastic option. Fantastic. It's clean. You just have to get agreement in New Hampshire or Maine or the northern states to get overhead transmission lines. Now here's another challenge. You lost the Vermont Yankee nuclear facility. To replace that one plant takes 55,000 acres of land for a wind farm. And the wind doesn't always blow. Anywhere you have a wind farm, anywhere you have a nuclear solar facility, you have a gas-fired generator.
Excuse
Why
me.
is that?
Because I want to just get this across, that ISO New England in their projection for 2023, their projections for energy efficiency programs, which now can be bid on the forward capacity market, show that they'll be able to replace 3,300 megawatts of nameplate capacity, and that's 100% on time, you know, when you reduce usage. That's base load, and it's 100% capacity operation. So, you know, we're not just talking about that the Midwest is going to wind rather than natural gas. I know they have to come off of coal, but other parts of the country are doing better than doubling down on natural gas and fossil fuel.
Actually, the PJM just announced the neighboring regional system operator just announced huge coal-fired retirements. The bottom line is, with the EPA regulations out there's no other alternative. These facilities either spend hundreds of millions of dollars to put on the equipment to make them cleaner burning, which is an option, or they retire. So what you're seeing is, and they're telling the ISO New England, we plan to retire. Braden Point is one of the biggest facilities in New England. They said we're shutting down by 2017. We don't control which plants shut down, but when you have a plant shut down, you got to replace it. ISO New England says not a lot of options. One option is gas-fired. We'd like to get some more wind farms. We'd like to get more solar. We'd like to get Canadian hydropower imported in from Canada. ISO New England doesn't control that. The market controls that. So one viable option is gas-fired.
Folks, we're getting ready to go. We're going to take the last two folks in line, and part of the team is already splitting up. Curtis and I will be hanging out. So we'll take these last two, and we need to take off.
Well, I hope mine's going to be short. My name's William Brown. I live in Millis, Mass., but my family owns 50 acres up here in Rindge, which is on your pipeline. And we also own 100 acres in Winchendon, which I've also received a request for survey. So my question really is simple. Is the Massachusetts line out?
No, not at all. We go... Are you... Okay, so maybe I misunderstood your question. We are still going through Massachusetts.
No, but is the Winchendon end of it completely out? Because I haven't received anything recently on the Winchendon end, but I have received the survey permission request for both lots.
Yeah, the Winchendon's out, and I'm going to ask Jim. Yeah, the Winchendon section's out at this point. It was part of the old route before we shifted.
Said it was William Brown?
Yes.
We'll follow up with you, William, and give you a letter that says
that. The other question I had is this is undeveloped land, and it's currently for sale. And you're saying that this going ahead will not impact the value of the property. But it seems to me that obviously if I have to have full disclosure, tell people that somebody's looking at it for a gas pipeline.
Sure, one of the advantages to the pipeline and the routing that we've done, William, is the co-location. So we're overlapping as much as possible into the power line corridor. Another area that we can work with is the temporary workspace, the impact of construction, again, by getting onto the property. If it was a green field like it was in Winchendon, we may be able to parallel some of your property lines to minimize that developable mobility. But since it's already in that existing corridor, really that impact is already there with the power line. Granted, there'll be some work outside of it, but by following the corridor, it's less.
The power line is currently in the same place you are. I don't have a power line down the line. They have it right away.
Correct.
My name's Dana Penny, and I'm Miss William, and I appreciate the Rindge Select Board giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I have a couple of quick comments, and then I'd like some clarification of something that I heard in the meeting earlier today. You say publicly that you've come through New Hampshire because it will impact the least number of people. I'm one of those people that it will impact, and I wish you use all sorts of nice, pushy words, fluffy words. I'd like you to say harm, that it will harm these people, because a lot of us are going to be harmed. So for the press, it sounds great. I was going to ask the gentleman in the green shirt who just left, when he was asked a question about how town would handle an event. And he was looking for terms, and I wanted him to say explosion. I wanted him to be able to say that word. Why don't you say explosion for me? Would you do that? In the event that there was an explosion, what would we do? Because I seem to have trouble saying explosion.
Thank you. The word harm and explosion, we are doing our best to minimize the impact to landowners. In many people's eyes, it's pure harm, absolutely. In that case, we're harming fewer landowners than any other option that we have out there. We are also working with the utility company. The more they allow us to utilize their cleared right-of-way, the less it harms or impacts folks outside of that right-of-way. Now, the other word is explosion. Any structure that moves energy that is designed to burn, whether it be fuel oil or coal or natural gas, if you get into a pipeline, you get into it with an explosive device or a backhoe, you bust into it and it catches on fire, it will explode. In that case, that's the word explosion, which I think you asked me to call. In that case, the valve shut off, it vents, it can take an hour to 2 hours for the gas to vent to atmosphere. We work with the local officials to cordon off the area. That's what we do. I answered your question on explosion.
You did what I asked. I was at a meeting in Concord today, and Alan Ford, you were at the meeting, so I'm going to ask you to speak for Alan. He said, when you just led right into my question, that you're working with the utilities to be able to use their right-of-way for, he described, to be able to push some of the fill and things, and you utilize that area to build the pipeline so that you didn't have to encroach as much on people's properties. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's what I was...
Okay, and so he wasn't clear how that process would work. You just said you're working closely with Eversource to make that happen. Would you describe that process to me, please?
We need permission from Eversource, PSNH, to be able to construct our pipeline on their easement. We need permission from you, the landowner, to construct our pipeline on your property. We work with you through that negotiation, acquisition process. We do the same with Eversource. We've had some meetings with Eversource. We're collaborating, we're working with Eversource so that we minimize our alignment and the impact on their facilities, at the same time balance that with your company.
Is there money involved when you...
There is, both for the landowner, both for the landowner and Eversource.
How do you pay public service too?
One and the same, so yes, we get rights from them as we do from the landowner.
How can, and what are you paying Eversource for? What are you paying Eversource for?
I don't know that yet. That hasn't been determined, the same that hasn't been determined for the landowner. But we'll be basing
I
it
didn't
on...
ask how much. When you determine the price, what are you paying them for?
Oh, because we're accessing a portion of their easement. They have an interest in the land. So it's some percentage of the fee that they have an interest in, because we're on their corridor.
Well, you're not going to build the pipeline on their land.
It could be. It could be. We're intending to do that in some areas, absolutely.
Still our land. It ain't their land. The majority of this corridor is privately owned property.
The issue affects people along 70 miles of New Hampshire.
It does, and it is your land. It absolutely is.
One last comment. If somebody comes to my house and I don't want them there, I ask them to leave. They don't have to go get permission from anybody. They just are expected to leave. And you haven't applied to FERC yet. You've made it very clear to all of us that you're in the exploratory stages of this. You've been asked by the people all along southern New Hampshire to leave. Why do you have to go and ask permission for FERC? Just pick up your stuff and leave.
Thank you very much, Senator Kevin Avard, and I've held my comments because I've heard a lot of these questions over and over and over again from all different towns. I have not seen any support for the pipeline. That being said, within the Senate, my colleagues, one of the big concerns that they have is eminent domain. Will that be used if you get your FERC license?
The process, Senator, as you know, is a very long process. And there's a lot of public input. We've talked about that process throughout the evening. After the input, after a year and a half, 2 years pass, we'll be working to try and get every landowner as much time as it takes, as many meetings as it takes, to voluntarily grant a right-of-way from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts. And there's a possibility that some people won't grant the right-of-way. Now, Tennessee Gas doesn't have the right of eminent domain, and you know that. The federal government has the right of eminent domain. So if the government approves, the federal government, the 5 commissioners approve it, and they authorize the pipeline, the possibility is that we would then petition the courts for properties that we would have to enter. Is that our preference? Absolutely not. Is our track record in acquiring rights of way 90 to 95%? Yes. So it is not something, Senator, that we want to do.
Could I trouble you to, if with your permission, with the folks' permission, would you mind CCing me on every email so that I can correspond with other people in this district? as you progress forward. Would you have any problem with that?
The activities that we have are between the landowner and Tennessee Gas. So I would have to ask you to ask the landowner to do that.
It's just for transparency, if that's okay. I'll hand you my card. And thank you very much for taking the final question. Thank you, folks, for being so brave to stand up.
I want to recommend you go down the Mass Pike and hang a left on 495.